All right, you damp dickheads. Welcome back to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're going balls deep in some serious shit.
Oh, God.
Floods.
Fuck yeah.
And I don't just mean, stepping in a puddle on the way to your car and getting your socks wet.
Yeah.
We're talking biblical,
Oh, yeah.
apocalyptic,
Uh-huh.
Noah's Ark level deluge.
The whole shebang.
You guys sent us a whole stack of info from Wikipedia
Oh, boy.
about floods.
Yeah.
So we're about to get seriously soaked
Right.
with knowledge.
Let's do it.
So I always thought, flood is just a flood.
Right.
Right.
Just a bunch of water.
But it turns out there's like a whole goddamn buffet of floods.
Oh, yeah. There are so many different kinds of floods.
Like what?
Well, you've got your aerial floods.
Aerial floods.
Yeah, those are like when an entire area just gets swamped.
Like a whole state?
It could be.
Wow.
Then there's riverine floods.
Right.
That's your classic river overflowing its banks.
Okay.
You got coastal floods.
Those are like when a hurricane comes in.
Exactly. Big waves, storm surge, all that.
Makes sense.
Urban floods.
That's when the sewer backs up.
Pretty much, cities aren't good at handling lots of water.
Yeah, that's what happens when you pave over everything.
Exactly. And you get,
Wait,
this is the crazy one, intentional floods.
intentional.
Yeah.
Who the fuck plans a flood?
Thinking, right? Sounds fucked up, but it's a thing.
So you're telling me, like, people purposely flood shit?
They do.
What's fuck?
It's been used for all sorts of things.
It is-
Agriculture managing rivers.
Okay.
And even in war.
Wait, you're telling me people would, like, flood their enemies?
Oh, yeah. It's a classic dick move in war.
That's brutal.
Like the Siege of Leiden back in the 1500s.
What was that?
Dutch rebels flooded the entire area around the city to kick out the Spanish.
Like a giant moat.
Exactly. That's insane. But intentional flooding isn't always about being an asshole.
Really?
The Dutch, they're actually pretty good at this.
I mean, they should be, right?
They've been dealing with water for centuries.
Makes sense.
They've got these things called overlaten.
Over what?
Overlaten. It's Dutch.
Oh.
Basically, they're designated areas they can flood on purpose.
Sounds like a controlled flood.
Exactly like a pressure valve. There's one called the Beers Overlay on the Meuse River.
Okay.
When the river's about to burst its banks,
Uh-huh.
they open this thing up
Yeah.
and flood a specific area to save everyone downstream.
So it's like sacrifice this shit to save that shit.
Pretty much.
So we've got floods planned by Mother Nature
Uh-huh.
and floods planned by assholes.
That's one way to put it.
But let's cut the crap.
Okay.
Why do floods even happen in the first place?
Good question.
Like, what's the root cause of all this watery chaos?
It's usually a combo of things.
Right.
Well, the obvious one, heavy rain.
Yeah.
But melting snow can also cause floods.
Makes sense.
Strong winds can push water around.
Like during a hurricane?
Exactly. And high tides can make things worse, too.
Okay.
And then there's
Oh, yeah.
humans.
We fuck up a lot of shit.
We're pretty good at making things worse.
How?
Deforestation.
Yeah, cutting down all the trees
Exactly.
and paving everything in sight.
Right. Concrete doesn't really absorb water.
It's like we're trying to turn the planet into a giant parking lot.
Yeah, and then we're surprised when it floods.
We basically treat the planet like a giant toilet and then act surprised when it backs up.
So we pave paradise and get a swimming pool.
Pretty much.
Lovely.
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Natural landscapes are like sponges.
They soak up the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we pave over those sponges
Uh-huh.
and boom,
Instant flood city.
you got it.
So we're basically sitting in a giant bathtub.
Yeah.
Just waiting to overflow.
That's a good way to put it.
Great. Just fucking great.
I know, it's not a pretty picture.
Okay, so we get it. If floods happen,
Right.
but why should we give a shit?
Because they can fuck shit up royally.
Like how?
Buildings, bridges, roads, just washed away.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on the economic impact.
What happens?
Businesses go under, crops die,
Yeah.
food prices skyrocket.
Like when there's a drought.
Exactly. It's a shit show.
So floods can literally ruin lives.
Absolutely. They can wipe out entire communities.
Damn, that's heavy.
Remember that massive flood in Bangladesh back in 2007?
I vaguely remember that.
They lost over 1 million homes.
1 million homes.
1 million.
That's more than the population of like San Francisco.
It's mind-boggling.
That's gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
And it wiped out a quarter of their entire GDP.
A quarter of their economy.
Poof. Just like that.
Jesus, that's brutal.
It was a disaster.
So we're talking like real world consequences.
Oh, yeah. Floods are no joke.
All right, so we've established that floods are terrifying.
Right.
And they can fuck up our shit in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
But what about the aftermath?
The aftermath is just as bad, if not worse.
How so?
Disease outbreaks.
Oh, yeah. All that stagnant water.
It's a breeding ground for all sorts of nasty stuff.
And then there's the psychological trauma.
Exactly. People lose everything they've ever known.
It's like a nightmare come true.
Floods leave scars, man.
Scars.
Both on the land and the people.
That's deep.
It's the truth.
All right, so we're living in a world that's increasingly prone to getting soaked.
Right.
What the hell can we do about it?
Well, the obvious answer is don't be a fucking moron.
Okay.
If you see flood water,
yeah,
turn around, don't drown.
That's good advice.
It's simple as that.
All right, so besides not being a moron,
right,
what else can we do?
There are ways to manage this shit.
Like what?
Dams. Okay, those hold back the water.
Exactly. Those are like walls along rivers to prevent flooding, better urban planning.
That's a good idea.
We need to design cities that can handle water.
Not just pave over everything.
Exactly. We need to work with nature.
Not against it.
Precisely.
So it's basically a constant battle against nature.
And let's be honest, we're not exactly known for winning those.
Yeah, we haven't had a great track record.
But we have to try.
I guess so.
We can't just give up.
Right.
We need to find ways to coexist with water.
In a way that doesn't involve constantly getting our asses kicked.
Exactly.
All right, so that's the engineering stuff.
Yeah.
But is there anything else we can do?
I think there's a bigger issue here.
What's that?
Our mindset.
What do you mean?
We need to accept that floods are a natural part of this planet.
Okay.
We can't stop them completely.
I get that.
But we can learn to live with them.
So start being stubborn assholes.
Pretty much.
And admit that water always wins.
Not exactly.
Then what?
It's about recognizing that we can't control everything.
Right.
We can't just pave over every inch of land and expect the water to magically disappear.
I see your point.
We need to work with nature.
Not against it.
Exactly.
I'm listening.
Good.
How do we do that?
Well, for one, stop building in floodplains.
I know it sounds obvious.
It does.
But we keep doing it.
We do.
We put up these fancy waterfront properties and then act all surprised when they get flooded.
It's like building a house in the middle of a goddamn volcano.
And expecting not to get burned.
Exactly.
It's like those beachfront mansions in Florida.
Yeah.
They get flattened by every hurricane.
Right.
And then they just rebuild in the same damn spot.
It's like they're asking for it.
Yeah, they are.
We need smarter land use policies that prioritize natural floodplains as buffers. As sponges to soak up the excess water.
I like that analogy.
It's a good one.
So instead of fighting the water,
we
need to give it space to do its thing.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
But how do we convince people to do that?
That's the million-dollar question.
It's going to be tough.
It will be.
People love their waterfront views.
They do.
But hey, maybe if we frame it as like saving money in the long run.
It's worth a shot.
Like, yeah, you might have to pay more for a house that's not on a floodplain.
Right.
But you won't have to worry about it getting flooded.
And you won't have to pay for flood insurance.
That's a good
It's all about thinking long term.
Okay, so no more building on floodplains.
Right.
Got it.
And you know what? We can actually learn a thing or two from indigenous communities.
Oh, yeah. Those guys know a thing or two about nature.
They've been living with floods for centuries.
And they've managed to survive.
Exactly.
So what can we learn from them?
They didn't just build shit wherever they felt like it. They had a plan. They had ways of adapting to the rhythms of water.
Like what?
Building houses on stilts.
So the water can flow underneath.
Exactly.
Smart.
Creating floating gardens.
That's cool.
They can rise and fall with the water levels.
They like that.
And using flood-resistant crops.
So their food supply isn't wiped out.
Precisely.
It's like they had this whole understanding of nature.
They did.
That we've kind of forgotten. Like they knew how to work with the water.
Exactly.
Not just try to dominate it.
They respected the water.
And we don't.
We've tried to control it.
And it hasn't worked out so well.
Not really.
So we need to go back to the basics.
I think so.
Learn from the people who've been doing this for generations.
Exactly.
And find a way to live in harmony with water.
That's the goal.
That's a lofty goal.
It is.
But it's worth striving for.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got a lot to think about.
Dear.
But it's clear that floods are a serious issue.
They are.
And we need to start taking them seriously.
We do.
So thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See ya. It's like we're pissing in Mother Nature's Cheerios and she's sending a tsunami to clean up our shit.
And she doesn't give a fuck about your vintage vinyl collection when she does it. 1 million homes a quarter of Bangladesh's GDP. That's some expensive ass plumbing. But okay, so if we're living in a world that's like increasingly prone to getting soaked, what the hell can we do about it? Besides, investing in a lifetime supply of those adult-sized rubber ducky floaties.
Well, for starters, don't be a fucking moron.
Solid advice.
If you see flood water, turn around. Don't drown.
Simple as that.
But yeah, we're not all gonna turn into desert nomads and live in yurts or some shit.
Yeah, or those weird underground houses.
Yeah, there are ways to manage this shit.
Like what? Building giant walls, like some kind of, I don't know, watery Game of Thrones situation.
Kind of. Dams, levees, better urban planning. Basically trying to outsmart or at least contain the inevitable. You know Mother Nature's gonna do her thing.
Sounds like a constant battle against nature. And let's be honest, we're not exactly known for winning those.
Nope.
But aside from all the engineering stuff, is there anything else we can do? Are we just fucked?
Mm-hmm. The engineering stuff is important, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bigger issue here.
What's that?
Our mindset.
Our mindset.
Yeah. We need to accept that floods are a natural part of this planet.
Do we?
We can't stop them completely, but we can learn to live with them in a way that doesn't involve constantly getting our asses kicked.
So stop being stubborn assholes and admit that, water always wins.
Not exactly. It's about recognizing that we can't control everything. We can't just pave over every inch of land and expect the water to magically disappear.
Yeah, it's not going to evaporate into the ether.
We need to work with nature, not against it.
Okay, I'm listening. How do we do that? Besides, sacrificing a goat to the water gods.
For one, stop building in floodplains.
Okay.
I know it sounds obvious.
It does.
But we keep doing it. Yeah. We put up these fancy waterfront properties.
Oh, yeah.
And then act all surprised when they get flooded.
Like those beachfront McMansions in Florida.
Yeah. It's like building a house in the middle of a goddamn volcano and expecting not to get burned.
Yeah, it's like they're asking for it.
Right. We need smarter land use policies that prioritize natural floodplains as buffers, as sponges to soak up the excess water.
So instead of trying to control the water, we give it space to do its thing.
Exactly. And you know what? We could actually learn a thing or two from indigenous communities who've been living with floods for centuries.
Yeah, those guys know a thing or two about living in harmony with nature.
They didn't just build shit wherever they felt like it. They had ways of adapting to the rhythms of water.
Give me some examples.
Building houses on stilts.
So the water can flow underneath.
Exactly. Creating floating gardens.
Okay, that's cool.
They can rise and fall with the water levels.
I like that.
And using flood-resistant crops.
So their food supply isn't wiped out every time it rains a little too hard.
Right. They had this whole understanding of nature that we've kind of forgotten.
Yeah, we've become so disconnected from the natural world.
We've tried to conquer it, control it, bend it to our will.
And it's biting us in the ass.
Big time.
So we need to, unlearn all that shit. Go back to the basics. Learn from the people who've been doing this for generations. Find a way to live in harmony with water.
Exactly.
That's a nice idea. Not sure how realistic it is, though. I mean, people are stubborn.
They are.
But hey, it's worth a shot.
Right.
Right? I mean, what's the alternative? Just keep getting our asses kicked by floods.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of getting my ass kicked.
Me too, man. Me too.
We need to be smarter, more adaptable, and most importantly, more respectful of the power of water.
Respect the water. Got it. So no more building on floodplains, learn from indigenous wisdom, and be prepared for a watery ass kicking every now and then. Any other pearls of wisdom for surviving this increasingly soggy future?
I think the most important thing is awareness.
Awareness.
Know your flood risk, have an evacuation plan, and don't be afraid to get the hell out of Dodge when the water starts rising.
Sound advice, my friend.
And one more thing.
Hit me.
Remember that flood myth stuff we were talking about earlier?
The whole Noah's Ark thing?
Yeah, and all the other stories from around the world. There's a reason those stories have stuck around for so long. They're not just bedtime stories.
What are they then?
They're warnings, reminders of the power of water and the importance of respecting it.
So those myths are basically ancient PSAs.
Yeah.
Public service announcements from the water gods.
Exactly. They're a way of passing down knowledge, of reminding us that we're not invincible. And there's a lot we can learn from those stories.
Like what?
About resilience, about adaptation, about the importance of community.
Community, huh? Sounds kind of touchy-feely for this conversation, but I get it. When the shit hits the fan, you need people you can rely on.
It's more than just touchy-feely bullshit. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. When a flood hits, it doesn't care about your social status, your bank account, or your political beliefs. It just fucks shit up. And in those moments, we need each other.
So it's like, fuck you, flood, we're gonna ride this shit out together.
Something like that. We need to build stronger communities, support each other, and learn from the wisdom of those who came before us. Because, let's face it, the water's not going anywhere.
Nope.
And neither are we.
Okay, so we're back, you waterlogged weirdos, for one last soggy slap in the face from reality.
Oh, yeah.
We've been neck deep in this flood shit for a while now.
You sure have.
You know, we talked about the different flavors of floods, the causes, the impacts, even dug up some ancient myths.
A whole 9 yards.
But you know what we haven't really touched on?
What's that?
The human side of this whole watery shit show.
Oh, yeah.
Like the sheer terror of watching everything you own get swallowed up by a goddamn wall of water.
It's a pretty primal fear.
It's like the ultimate violation, right?
Absolutely.
Your safe space, your home, invaded by this, like, relentless destructive force.
It's not just about the stuff you lose.
It's the emotional shit that sticks around long after the water's receded.
Exactly. The anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, it can really fuck with your head.
People losing their homes, their livelihoods, their sense of security.
And it's not just individuals who suffer.
Whole communities get ripped apart.
The stress, the displacement, the loss, it can break people.
It's like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
You know, the water goes away, but the damage just keeps spreading.
And rebuilding after a flood, that's a whole other level of hell.
Yeah, it's not just about slapping some new drywall up and calling it a day.
You're rebuilding lives, communities, hope. It's a long and painful process.
And honestly, that's the shit that scares me the most. Like, we can build dams and levees and all that jazz, but how do you build resilience against that kind of trauma?
That's where community comes in.
Having people you can count on.
Exactly. Family, friends, neighbors, they're your lifeline when the shit hits the fan.
It's like that saying, it takes a village.
Right. A village to help you bail out your basement when it turns into an indoor swimming pool. But seriously, having a strong support system makes all the difference in the world.
So it's like giving the finger to the flood. Like, fuck you, we're stronger than you think.
Exactly. We need to foster that sense of community, that shared resilience. And you know what?
What?
Those flood myths we were talking about.
Yeah, the ancient stories about pissed-off water gods and giant boats full of animals.
They actually play a role in all of this.
You're saying those stories can actually help us deal with the trauma of real-life floods?
Think about it. Those stories have been around for centuries.
Yes, time.
They've helped people process loss, make sense of chaos, find meaning in the face of destruction.
So they're not just entertainment.
They're survival tools. Passed down from generation to generation.
Like ancient therapy sessions around the campfire.
Yeah.
Sharing stories to help people cope with some serious shit.
Exactly. And they remind us that we're not the first ones to go through this.
Right. People have been dealing with floods since forever.
And they found ways to survive, adapt, even thrive.
I don't know, man. It's kind of comforting in a weird way.
It is. It's a reminder that we're not alone in this.
Like, yeah, this sucks, but humanity's been through worse, and we're still here.
We're survivors. We've got resilience in our DNA.
So chin up, you soggy bastards.
Chin up.
All right. So that's the bottom of the bucket, folks. We went deep on floods, learned a shit ton about the science, the impacts, the myths, the whole damn enchilada. But here's the takeaway. Floods are a part of life.
Always have been, always will be.
But we're not powerless. We can prepare, we can adapt, and most importantly, we can support each other.
Yeah.
And hey, maybe those ancient myths can even teach us a thing or two about how to stay afloat when the shit inevitably hits the fan.
You never know.
Thanks for diving in with us, you waterlogged weirdos. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.